Welcome to Espresso Shots. My name is John. It is October the 23rd, and today I had the opportunity to go to the Cove and listen to Stephem Rolston give a presentation at the Mayor's Breakfast. Now, since I was invited by the Mayor herself, and Stephen also emailed me asking me to come, I thought, what a great opportunity for a business owner to get out and find out exactly what's going on. I was surprised. There was actually a lot of people there, a lot more than just business owners. Actually, it was tough to get a seat. I sat way at the back. Fortunately, I was able to film, so I got close to the scene, and I was able to catch a little bit of footage so you can hear what Stephen had to say. So enjoy this episode and let me know, what are your thoughts? Do you think expanding the village and adding a subdivision into the village is a good thing for the village? Do you think it changes the appearance and the quaintness of the village? I see it both ways. Growth is hard to stop, and the secret is out. Westport is a great place to live, and it's a great place to have a business, and I think people are starting to recognize that. So
I wanted to know exactly what was going to happen. Well, this is a novel approach, folks. He's here to get your input. The meeting at the church from 10 to noon is to hear from you. So, he's going to lay out the vision for you, but please don't get bogged down that he's not going to tell you exactly how many homes are going to be built or exactly when, because it's a work in progress and this is part of his consultation. There will be many legal steps that need to proceed, and they will fall out, but this is an information session for you. So, Stephen?
Well, luckily the last 20 years we have had a cottage on Bob's Lake in a community called Bedore Farm that we also developed with my friend Jim McIntosh and McIntosh Perry and that engineer firm. And so my boys were lucky enough to grow up in and around this area their entire lives. And they have come here to this town and they have grown very, very fond of Camp Iowa and the environs around Westport. So to them, this is home. And when I speak about the town of Westport to many people I know in home building, they think, Westport, why would anyone live in Westport? Why wouldn't your sons want to live in downtown Ottawa or downtown Toronto? And I think, well, it's because they're country boys. Not everybody wants to live in a downtown urban environment. And my boys certainly don't want to live in an urban setting. But I also have 3 older sisters and my mom and dad who passed away, and actually one of my sisters just passed away last week. All of them are not very well off, and my parents especially. And so over the last number of years, I've just felt welling up inside me this change, that there's got to be a better way to build homes. There's got to be a better way to provide a roof over people's heads. And so it was that about 10 years ago, through one of the ministries I'm involved with, I started going to Niagara-on-the-Lake. And I fell in love with this little community called The Village. And it is developed by people I got to know providentially about a year ago, John and Liz Hawley. And they explained to me when I met them last year that there is a better way. And it's called designing a traditional neighborhood design community. A TND, it's called. And in their community, the laneways are at the rear. And I've been advised by many of my friends in the marketplace, don't go with something that's non-conventional, but do try and maintain many of the aspects that traditional neighborhood design communities are known for. So for instance, do go with the big front porch, do go with tree-lined boulevards, do go with sidewalks, because many new communities do not have sidewalks. Ever since World War II, we've become a car-dependent community as opposed to a people-focused community. And so are some of the elements that we hope to bring to our new community that we hope to call, maybe, Watercolor at Westport. So Watercolor at Westport is the name of the community. And we hope to have a number of different homes in that community, catering to all different ages, all different stages, and all different income levels. And what does that look like exactly? Well, we know the market market. And we think the market is, what we're going to cater to is probably 60% are the people who are respected and connected, and they're affluent and they're influential. And maybe they don't yet live in Westport. Maybe they have a cottage here, and their primary age group is around 50 to 80. And we think that EQ Homes, a home builder in Ottawa that we're very fond of, in their community called Clarence Creek, they have wonderful award-winning product. And we think our price points will be very similar to theirs. But going back to these traditional neighborhood design communities, there are a number of them actually around. There's this community, as I mentioned, called The Village in Niagara-on-the-Lake, and it's beautiful, and I'd encourage you to check that out. A little bit closer to Ottawa, there's one called New Amherst. So I've been to see that community, and I've met the founder of that community. It is a beautiful traditional neighborhood design community. And what's so different about them, again, is the sense of community that they establish. One that was established in Washington, called Seabrook, is a little oceanfront town in the middle of nowhere where they had to create the entire retail environment. And so as that community evolved, Seabrook, they tried to create these beautiful communities within a community that catered to all different ages and stages. So at the waterfront, the homes are about $1.5 million. A little bit further in, they're at about $1 million. A little bit further in, they're at about $500,000. And now they're trying to come up with even more affordable product to cater to more people. But what they had to do there is create the community from scratch. And so it was that when I became aware of this property that Mark Snyder, my friend through his engineer firm, Macintosh Prairie, where he worked, when he told me about the rice farm, all of these things seemed to come together. I had been traveling to Niagara-on-the-Lake, and I fell in love with that community called The Village. And it's so different. When you walk through that, the grounds are maintained impeccably. The gardens, everyone has these beautiful, immaculately maintained gardens. And the lots are very small, so they fit a large number of homes into the property. But the sense of community that is established and the relationships, we're all relational beings. As the founder, John Hawley, walked me through the community and I met some of these people. People just like you, but because maybe you live here, you're used to knowing your neighbors. You're used to having relationships. Having lived, pretty much our entire lives in these communities that I built, I didn't have relationships with my neighbors. I had relationships with a lot of other people, but I didn't have relationships with my neighbors because we were all garage door people. We would press the garage door opener and, you'd drive in and you'd be done. But what I've fallen in love with about Westport is it's a true walkable community. And as I learn more about these walkable communities, like Seabrook out in Washington, the amenity that they have is everything is walkable. And it's like all the European communities that I went traveling, to visit in Europe when I was studying at university. Except it's right here, and it's in our backyard. And it's a vision that I'm so fond of, because here we would not have to establish the retail. The retail is already done. The shops, they're already done. And creation, how can we improve upon 30 lakes within a 15-mile radius? The nature, it's all here. So what we're trying to do is bring an urban setting into a rural setting. We're trying to combine nature and neighborhood. And we're trying to do it in an established community, but we're going to need your help. Because basically we cannot pull permits for 2 years. It's a very lengthy, arduous program and process that we're going to be undertaking. And we're excited about it because we think this will contribute to the long-term viability of Westport. Because what's at stake? Well, about 100 years ago, this town was about 2,000 people. But it's been on a slow, steady decline really ever since. And what's at risk? Well, perhaps the bank would close. Perhaps the elementary schools would close, because the aging demographic of this town is not sustainable. So that's why our marketing is going to be towards young families. So our website is up. Watercolor@westport.com is what we're running with now until somebody can give me a better name. Because that's what you got to do. You got to roll with a plan. And so I'm privileged to have my former draftsman, Jerry St. John, sign on as being a home builder. We don't undertake or plan on building these homes. We're just developing the community. I feel I've been given this vision of bringing as many people as possible to this town, and that something big is going to happen here. And I'm dreaming big that something will happen here, but it'll take a combined effort of everybody pulling together to market the merits of Westport. And so that's why for the next 2 years, what we're going to be doing is, creating videos about what's so desirable or interesting about this community. Well, many of you have been here for many years. I think you also take that for granted. But for somebody like me who grew up in 7 different homes all around the Greater Toronto Area and has visited over 50 countries around the world, what we have here is very unique and very special and very different. And it's simply a matter of making people aware that this might be somewhere that they would like to raise their family. Because number one thing parents are looking for is it's safe. And that is what Westport has in spades. And that's why this idea of building large, livable front porches as a characteristic of a traditional neighborhood design community, that's what we want to do. That's what Westport has. It's these large, livable front porches, like the homes that I used to walk around in the glebe, where my now wife used to live. She lived in the glebe when we were dating, when we moved here. And I used to walk around that neighborhood for hours and days and literally weeks and months just dreaming of the lights on and the families living in these beautiful homes. So we're going to try and blend the best of technology and innovation and bring new homes to Westport. But we want to make it look as much as possible in a modern context like old Westport with these livable front porches. Now, will every home have a front porch? No, that would look kind of boring. But the architecture that I love is called Craftsman, and it is in every Canadian and US town sort of from the era of around 1900 to about 1930. It was a replacement for the Victorian era. But we will be catering to different architectural styles, just like we want to have different sizes of homes, different types of homes. And one thing I wanted to point out to you, sorry, it's kind of awkward up here. Here is our little site plan of the community, what we think it will look like. The rice farm, just to give you an idea, is number 16 on Concession Street. And we'll just come in the first phase, and then we'll go out over near the stormwater management pond, it's called. And we've bought number 30 Concession Street from Dustin Mulvihill. So that will be a home that will provide the other entrance to the community. And then we just want to go in and we want to go out. And we don't think all these homes are just going to show up overnight. We think it'll take 2 years to get our approvals, or a year and a half anyways. And then we're going to slowly roll this out over time. We used to only build about 25 homes a year. Sometimes, a dozen, sometimes as many as 30. But we think with 10 rental units of housing and maybe 10 or 20, units of new housing, that this is something that's sustainable and it's growable over a long period of time, as in 10 or 20 years. And this is where I want to spend as a legacy project the rest of my years, being involved with a community like this. A community that I love, a community that I've been a part of, and a community that I think God has given me a vision for a better way to build homes. And it's these traditional neighborhood design ideas of safety. Number one thing a mother is looking for is safety. and with eyes on the streets and different widths of roads to make them pinched and narrow at the intersections so that it's safe for pedestrians to cross. There's all these little things that you do to pull the house further towards the road. And then one neighbor can wave and say hi to the other neighbor. But the porches are elevated, so they're private when you want privacy, and with great big backyards. So we want to have walking trails. We want to have a sense of community established. Because again, we're relational beings. And the third thing we think of safety, walkability, and connectivity. You guys have connections with all your neighbors. Again, most people don't. Most people coming from the GTA, or from Ottawa. They don't know their neighbors. And they live in this frenetically busy world. And they would love to engage and just slow down the pace of life and come out to a beautiful, pristine village like this. Or at least I think they do. Thank you, James. So I had some notes. Maybe I should refer to them. I just felt you should hear my heart. I want to start with a quote by Winston Churchill. There's no doubt, whatever, and he said this when he was addressing the English Architectural Association. He said, there is no doubt whatever about the influence of architecture and structure upon human character and action. We make our buildings, and afterwards they make us. They regulate the course of our lives. And when I read that, I thought about how important it is. Because really, you could change the idea, and you could say this idea of how we shape our buildings, and afterwards they shape us is really important. But you could also say, we shape our communities, and afterwards they shape us. Because what people are looking for, I think, is a sense of place, a sense of belonging, a sense of community that is completely absent in our modern day lifestyle. But in a walkable community, it establishes itself regularly. Because the joke in traditional neighborhood design is to create a great community from scratch, you need a bookstore, you need a bakery, and if you're lucky, a brewery. Well, here, we have a post office, which Mark Snyder tells me is the main gathering point for the community. And I think, wow, awesome. A post office. Who knew that that's what purpose that would serve as one of the many main gathering places? Because I know I've spent more than enough money in this establishment, meaning architects, over the last number of years, and at the Sherman Winery with some consultants as well. So I know there are a lot of places to meet. But we're lucky enough to have a bakery, an amazing grocery store, and we have a library. And library and books are just incredible. So I just love books. So you'll see on our website a lot of reference to a lot of books that I think, if you're interested, you might want to do some research and find out about the benefits of living in a traditional neighborhood design community. But what we have, I like to say, is we have a bakery, we have a brewery, but we even have a winery. So how good is that? You know, sure, we got all the rest. And this established town that you may take for granted or think, oh yeah, you know, how could this happen? Well, I see it with a completely different vision because of all the places I've lived. And so I look at Westport and I fell in love from the first time I drove down that hill. And I think of Foley Mountain and the connection to nature. And I think of how God has blessed this place so abundantly with so many natural features. When I've told people it's only $1,200 to dock their boat, they've said, what, a month? I'm like, no, that's a year. Like, they can't believe the beauty of this town when they've come to see it for the first time. And they think that we are sitting on a gem. The secret is just to tell the world about it. So, yeah, there might be upwards of 200 homes. There might be 100 units of rental housing in one way, shape, form, or another. But when you're only trying to put in 26 units in the first phase and you haven't quite got it all figured out how it's all going to unroll, we don't know how many units there will be. So we have to size our pipe on the high end and then slowly, one baby step at a time, the same way we did it for 20 years in home building. We're going to borrow $1 million or $2 and then we're going to pray. And we're going to hope that the market shows up. And we're going to hope that Jerry, who I'm going to invite up here to say a few words. Jerry and Christy, would you guys come up? I want to introduce you. Because we were going to market this home to young families. So if you look on the website and you see 2 stories and young families, you'll wonder what's up. But now I'm just going to have Jerry say a little bit about his building career.
Hello. I'm not as great a public speaker as Steve here. I think he did a wonderful job explaining his vision for the community. A little bit about myself. I've spent pretty much my entire career in the home building industry. I've been at it since the early 90s and worked with builders, developers in the Ottawa area. In those companies, I filled multiple roles from junior draftsman to senior construction manager, building 60 to 100 homes a year. We think this is an amazing opportunity and a great community, and really look forward to seeing this evolve over the next couple of years. And yeah, I'll introduce Christy. I don't think she wants to say anything, but Christy Gillespie is my right-hand person. She's been with me for about 10 years now, and she's a tremendous asset to my little company. And everybody, I think, will see her around town, and she's our people person of the company. She will meet and greet everyone, and everybody will be pretty pleased with her services. Anyway, it was, I'll hand this back to Steve.
Thanks, Jared. And so now I'm going to have Mark Snyder come up and say hi. But while he's doing that, I'll show you this other little poster board that if you come over to our information session later, you'll see we plan on building a lot of bungalows. Again, the target demographic is the 50 to 80-year-old, 1,000 square feet to 2,000 square feet. What will vary will be the type of lot that it is on. Because the cost of servicing land today is very expensive. Those yellow machines that cost $1 million each, they cost that in Toronto, they cost that in Ottawa, they cost that everywhere. So our homes will be, unfortunately, no less expensive in some respects than they are elsewhere. Because a 2x4 is a 2x4, a brick is a brick, and we live in a global economy. So the idea of making it less expensive in Westport, I hate to disappoint anyone, that's an unrealistic expectation. And if there's one thing we want to do is set realistic expectations for everyone. But yeah, Mark.
Good morning, everyone. It's a pleasure to be in your beautiful village here tonight. Steve thinks I'm a newcomer here, that I'm a lifelong resident here, but in reality, I'm a relative newcomer. I think we're the only the third generation in this village. So anybody from Westport knows, unless your great-great-great-grandfather's buried here, you're a newcomer. So. But I grew up on, many of you know, I grew up on Concession Street in Westport. And for years, my playground was the rice farm in behind. Beautiful 50-acre property with rolling terrain. And I went off to planning school in the 80s. And for years, coming home, I would look across that property and see incredible potential. And as a planning consultant for many years, I know that urban-ready development, developable land, serviceable land, and designated for urban development is very rare, and it's in huge demand. And the day would come that this property would be eyed by developers. So selfishly, I wanted to make sure that the right developers would come along. I know through my connections that there's been a number of people eyeing that property. And so I did introduce Steve to the opportunity. And I know Steve's a gentleman who who really is well read. He researches, he wants it to be done right. And I know as well that his heart is here with his cottage nearby. And working together, it's been an honor to work with him and the team to see this coming together. And I am passionate about this town, always have been. My wife knew someday we'd be moving back, so we moved back in 2007. And so we want to make sure that this is done right. All the best of what Westport is, we want to incorporate in this new community. Steve asked me just this morning if I'd come up and say just a few words, and just one thought came to my mind and about this as well, is that for a few years I worked for the provincial government in New Brunswick, and I was bringing land use planning to areas of New Brunswick that did not have land use planning. And so I toured all over rural New Brunswick, a number of small villages and hamlets, and when I would meet with them, they often, we'd form working groups of local farmers and business owners and residents. And the thing I heard repeatedly, I think almost without exception in these communities, is what are we going to do to help our villages from dying? And there's a lot of areas in rural New Brunswick that stores are closing, the schools are closing, and it's a very sad reality that you don't know how ugly that can be until you're in that situation. We're not. Westport is enviable in a lot of ways with what we have. Great schools and great shops and businesses, but as Steve said, God has blessed us with incredible geography and topography around here, the lakes, the hills, and so it's a great opportunity. It's we're at a threshold here where we can, if you're not moving ahead, you may be moving behind. And yes, the population has been in steady decline. The number of houses has not necessarily decreased, but the people per household has decreased significantly as the age of the average household has gone up. So again, it's a great opportunity, great honor for me to be part of this team and to see this all coming together. And I welcome you, and I'm sure Steve will welcome you as well, to come over later at the Free Methodist Church if you have specific questions about the development. We'd be really glad to hear from you.